Hi, everybody. It is February 26th, and it's the 26th day of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. I want to thank L.D. Robinson for all her work. She has actually read every day. I have not been able to do that, but today I have to read because it is erotica. And as most of you know, I write erotica. Eyeless Diamonds 1, 2, and 3. It can be purchased on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and anywhere. So just type it in and buy a copy. It's about espionage. It's about murder. It's about love, and it's about sex. So Eyeless Diamonds 1, 2, and 3. But my other favorite author who writes erotica is Keith Kareem Williams. He has an anthology out now. It's called Sticky Situations 5. And it's an anthology of Keith Kareem Williams, Hakeem Stokes, and Brahim Gibbs. So to my good friend, Mr. Keith Kareem Williams, I am dedicating Erotica Day to you. His chapter is called Wildflowers and Bullets, and this is part 1. It's called The Blue Moon. I'm reading from my computer so I can make it larger. As you know, as we get older, larger is better. So part 1, Blue Moon. As naked as the day he was born, Hayden stood at the 5-star hotel room window with the curtains pulled wide open. He bathed in the moonlight and the electric glow of the city below, all of the tiny lights that burned brightly through the windows like giant stars against concrete and glass backdrops. Every light in every window illuminated from the different spaces in the homes of people on different journeys, living different lives, which made him think of his own and many of the choices he had made along the way. "What are you doing over there, looking all sexy in the moonlight?" A soft, seductive voice purred behind him. Hayden looked back over his shoulder at the gorgeous woman who lay naked in the king-size bed behind him. He had purposely pulled back the sheets to leave her hip and thigh uncovered, to tease him with a glimpse of her golden brown goodness. Joy was the sexiest and probably the most dangerous woman he had ever been with. When she saw his eyes on her, she slowly pulled the sheets back even further before she reached the back and squeezed her own big soft ass to remind him of how juicy it was. His head was immediately filled with dirty thoughts, and her mischievous smile made him think that she had read his mind. At times, it frightened him how she knew exactly what he wanted, how he wanted it, and how effortlessly she supplied it. Then he looked at the fully loaded chrome handgun on the nightstand, where it sat next to the ashtray, where a half-finished cigarette still smoldered weakly. It reminded him of all the dangerous things that bound them together. "I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore," he told her sternly. Joy laughed inside because she didn't hear any conviction in his tone and make her believe it. "What are you talking about?" she asked as he pretended to be confused. "Stop talking nonsense and bring that big chocolate monster over here so I can play with it." She wagged her finger and beckoned him. Hayden didn't resist or protest. He turned away from the view outside and focused on the view inside as he walked over to where she lay on the bed. As soon as he lay down next to her, Joy reached between his legs and gripped his thick shaft firmly. She looked directly in his eyes as she used her tongue to lick her palm until it was soaking wet and drenched with spit. Then she grabbed his shaft again and began to stroke him slowly. Now, what were you saying?" Joy purred. "You don't want to do what anymore?" she questioned him. "You don't like this? You don't want to do this anymore?" she asked before she pressed her plump, juicy lips against his. Hayden kissed Joy passionately as he gently pulled the sheets off of her so that he could pinch her nipples and massage her breast. He loved the way she felt spiritually and physically. Inside, she could be tough, cold, and sometimes savage, but outside, her flesh was soft and warm and sweet. He loved to touch her, to squeeze her, and to please her because those were the only times she seemed to be his. It was the duality of her nature that had him so addicted to their entanglements. Any other time outside of the bedroom, she was a rose covered in thorns, but in the bed, as he touched her, she felt like clay, like he could shape any way he wanted. Joy moaned softly, the way she touched her and kissed, the way he touched her and kissed her always made her wet. She loved how greedy his mouth and his hands were. She enjoyed how deeply he touched her and how wide he would stretch her. That was why she gave in to him so easily. She exhaled as her heart raced when they finally parted lips. Hayden took a moment before he spoke. He felt himself being swept up in the passion of another fury. Steamy moment with Joy, but there were things that he needed to say before he forgot everything that was weighing heavily on his mind. He knew that was exactly what would happen if he went deep inside her. We should have never started this because this is dangerous, Hayden said as he held Joy's chin to guide her gaze directly into his eyes. But I'm not talking about this, what we're doing right now. I'm talking about that other thing we do. I don't want to do it anymore, Hayden explained. This or that, both could get us killed, she reminded him. So what's the difference, Joy asked. There's a difference, Hayden answered sternly with conviction. And what's that, Joy asked, annoyed because her energy was, his energy was killing her vibe. She wanted to have hot and nasty sex and he seemed to want to talk, which was definitely not what she was in the mood to do. Right now, this thing that you and me are doing could get us killed because we're not supposed to be doing it. If Kurt finds out I'm fucking his woman, he'll kill us both. But the other thing, it doesn't sit right with me. We've been real lucky so far, but how long before we have to kill innocent people, he asked. So? She asked immediately. Hayden was reminded of how cold and savage she could be. I know you. Listen, I know you don't give a fuck, but I do. I don't want that on my soul, he told her. But in her eyes, he recognized the indifference that lived inside her. A chill ran down his spine from how heartless she could be. Listen to me, she answered, like a parent would speak to a child. The other thing that you're so against all of a sudden has made us wealthy, she reminded him. Wealthy? No, it's made us rich, he corrected her. Joy shook her head and sighed. Rich, wealthy, either way, whatever. Both are better than being poor, like we were before, she said. Joy pulled him close so that he could rest his head against her naked breast. She held him tightly like a mother would a frightened child who was afraid of thunder or who had just woken up from a nightmare. She felt all the tension leave his body as he relaxed. I know you're right, but I have a bad feeling about all this. We were supposed to do this once, and now Kurt keeps wanting more and more, Hayden expressed his fears. Don't you want more too, Joy said. I think it's gonna cost us too much. I feel it, I swear to you I do, he said. Nothing's gone wrong yet, but something will eventually. If we keep pushing it, this shit is gonna go bad. I don't want to see what that looks like. You're so weird. You mean to tell me that you're more worried about them and my man finding out and that I'm fucking you behind his back? She laughed. Listen, he said, I'm not scared of Kurt. Should you fucking, you fucking should be, she said. They both knew how dangerous her man was. I can handle Kurt. I'll deal with him however I have to if he ever finds out about this thing with you and me. I just don't want to hurt any innocent people or get gunned down by police if they catch us, because that's how the fuck it would go down, because I'm fucking going to jail. There ain't locking me up for 40 years. Fuck that, he told her. So when since you've been afraid of police? Joy said. I'm telling you, Joy, I have a bad feeling, he told her. Those robberies get more and more dangerous. His voice, and he had real concern in his voice. Oh, hush, she said. Joy pushed Hayden onto his back, climbed on top of him. She straddled him, but deliberately made sure that his manhood didn't slip inside her as she grind on him just enough to tease him with the way her wet vagina lips felt against his shaft. He tried to grip her hips so that he could take control and push himself inside her, but she grabbed his hands and pinned them into the mattress on both sides. Let me ease your mind and make you feel good, she whispered in his ear before she gently bit his earlobe. If Kurt could see what I'm about to do with you, he would kill me, she said. I wouldn't let him, Hayden reassured her. I know, she whispered. As Joy kissed his cheek and then his neck, she deliberately avoided his lips because when she was done doing what she was about to do to him, she wanted him to use his mouth to please her somewhere else. She kissed him on his chest, but avoided licking his nipples because she knew that he didn't like her. However, she knew that he loved when she kissed his stomach, and she watched as he stared down at her with eager anticipation. He tried to grab her head to push her head down further, but she pushed his hand away. She wanted to make him wait just a little bit longer. She bit his thigh and she grabbed his shaft of his swollen dick, then sweetly kissed the tip. She moaned as she rested against the side of her face and looked up at his hungry eyes. Hayden watched Joy open wide and slowly work his dick into her warm, wet mouth. Each time she bobbed her head, then up and down, she took a little deeper until his tip touched her throat. Then she took him even deeper until her eyes watered, but she didn't choke or gag. Oh, fuck, he whispered. Hayden looked away and closed his eyes because he feared that if he continued to stare down at his lover, she would make him explode way before he wanted to. Even with his eyes closed, the way she moaned and the slurping sounds of her mouth were almost too much for him to take as she made love to him with her mouth in ways that no other woman had ever come close to. Joy knew Hayden's body, and she felt the way he shuddered as he fought not to come. She noticed how his toes curled and the way every muscle in his body tensed. She purposely played with him and exerted enough sexual intensity to almost make him her slave. She was going to suck and fuck all the worries and anxiety away from him. She licked him. She tasted that he was about to climax, so she suddenly abruptly pulled back. She wanted his mind and his mouth on her pussy instead of everything he was afraid of or worried about. I want to sit on your face, she told him in a furious, sultry voice. Come on, he told her as he grabbed her arm to pull her up away from his pulsating penis, which glistened with her spit which dripped down the length of it from the tip right down to the entire shaft. Come put that wet ass on my face, he commanded. She smiled as she seductively crawled up to where his face was and then gently sat down on it. She made sure that he could breathe before she slowly began to grind her lips and her hips where he felt his lips. She reached for his dick so he could stroke it while he tasted her. The way he ate her let her know how much he loved it. Hayden softly kissed her pussy lips before he used his tongue to stimulate her clit. She was already wet, but before long, his nose, lips, chin, beard were soaked. He grabbed her juicy cheeks and squeezed them. He loved how soft she was and the way her ass jiggled. Joy practically screamed as she came, and her orgasm was strong and she nearly drowned him. Before she could even recover, he spread her cheeks far apart and buried his tongue between them. The sensation nearly drove her crazy. She leaned forward, lay flat on top of him, and took his penis into her mouth again. Hayden loved the way he felt when she moaned with his manhood deep in her throat. They continued to please each other that way until she wanted more. Fuck me, she said as she climbed on top of him. When Hayden heard that aggressive tone in her voice, he knew that it was a demand and a requirement, not a request. It was a requirement, not a request. The way he pushed her head down on the mattress and made her arch her back let Joy know that he completely understood the assignment. She held her breath and gripped the sheets as he slapped her cheeks before he pushed all of his heavy, thick dick inside of her. She bit her lip and took all of it. Hayden grabbed a handful of her curly mane and yanked her head back as she rammed her so hard her cheeks clapped. In her reflection in the mirror on the wall next to the bed, he saw her eyes roll back as he pounded her. He reached forward and put his finger in her mouth. She willingly and eagerly accepted it. Joyce sucked on his finger as sensuously as she would have sucked his dick. She loved being a slut for him. Everyone on their floor must have heard them going at it in the privacy of their expensive room. The walls weren't thick enough to mute the sounds of Joy hollering or Hayden talking dirty to her. None of that mattered to either of them. They were caught up in their own moment, one that neither one of them wanted to end. Hayden grabbed Joy's waist as he changed the pace of how he stroked her from behind. She reached back and spread her own cheeks apart so he could get a better view of what it looked like as he slid in and out of her slowly. She had already come twice, and as much as she enjoyed the way he made love to her, Joy's ego wanted him to come too. Come on my ass. Come on my ass, she told him. Come all over my ass, she repeated. As soon as he heard her say that, Hayden pulled out and exploded all over her cheeks and all down her butt crack. He loved when she talked dirty. Joy collapsed flat on her stomach on the bare mattress. They had fucked the sheets right off the bed. She looked back at him and smiled before she rubbed the semen that he had splashed all over her butt like lotion. She made sure that he was watching her as she brought her fingers to her lips and tasted it. I love it when you're nasty, he sighed, as he tried to catch his breath. I know you do, she answered, satisfied and certain she had done the right thing and had strengthened their souls and tied them together. Wow. So that is Keith Kareem Williams. This is Erotica Day 26, Sticky Situations, an anthology by Keith Kareem Williams, Hakeem Strokes, and Boheem Gibbs. And this is Wildflowers and Bullets by Keith Kareem Williams. Now, if you can't get excited by that, I don't know what will. And this has been Erotica Day for the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. And I thank you for joining me this evening. And I hope you've enjoyed us reading all month. And I hope you will join us next year as we reach out to literacy as a legacy. Thank you. Good night.